We're here with SMU head coach Steve Samarah. What's going on? I'm Sid. There's Sal right there, and we're here with SMU head coach Steve Samarah. How's it going, Coach?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me.
What's up, Coach? It's been a long time. It's really exciting to have you on here.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate it. It's great seeing you.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, we just wanted to ask you a bunch of questions about your career and your successful career for sure, and just really dive into it. So our first question that we had for you was, where did your coaching career begin, and take us through the journey?
For sure. Started actually on a golf course in 92. There was a St. X alumni golf tournament. I was a previous coach of mine, John Stevens, was there, and he goes, "Yeah, if you ever want to come down for training camp." I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And honestly, from that day, that was it. The bug had got me, and I spent sort of 4 years as a part-time coach, and then I went and took a couple of years of leave of absence. Spent 2 years sort of full-time at X, and that's really where the bug got me, that this is what I want to do. And then obviously I went back to SMU for 11 years, and part of your time there, obviously, and 10 years at Carleton, and now back at SMU. It's gone full circle.
Yeah, for sure. Where would you say you prefer coaching? Like, obviously, you've coached 10 years, you said, at Carleton, and then I don't even know how many years at SMU now. You're probably hitting, what, 15 now?
Yeah, probably about that, yeah.
Yeah, so between the two, like, what was the difference between the two? And obviously, I would like to believe you prefer to be at St. Mary's.
Yeah, no, I would say the neat thing about Carleton was it was a startup program. So right from the ground floor, I was involved, like designs of the locker room, designs of the bleachers, designs of the uniforms, absolutely everything. And then recruiting everybody and building a culture that, I hope to this day still has some merit, and but to your point, this is where I want to be. And then I am so glad to be back here. I think the campus, the university, the city, it just fits my style better, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when you got hired, how excited I was. Sid, you can go ahead and ask the question, but I wanted to say that I was pretty excited that you got hired back there, and it's just a familiar face, and anytime I want to reach out, I know you're just a phone call away, which is a pretty cool relationship that we've always had.
Yeah, and trust me, that's a big piece, and I miss that because with the Carleton experience, a lot of those guys were so young. There was no real. The only connection I had with the past program were, basically a donor-coach relationship, not just a coaching player-coach relation.
Right.
Right. Okay, so I'll get into the next question. I wanted to ask you what your favorite game of all time that you were the head coach of. Like, what was the most memorable one you could give us?
I would say the most memorable was in 2007 when we beat Laval at home in the UTEC Bowl to go on to the Vanier. And there's a caveat to why, and I think it's a pretty funny story. Is that and Sal would know this, at overlooking the field at St. Mary's, they called it the lounge. In the lounge up, there was these big windows, and they overlooked the field, and it was probably 3 hours, I'd say, before game time. And the game was broadcast by Sportsnet, and they had their whole crew off to the side, and I don't think they realized that I was there. And the producer of the show was like, okay, we got to make sure we get lots of footage on Laval. So for next week, we've got a lot of B-roll that we have. And I'm just standing there and I'm kind of smiling to myself. And one of the guys recognizes me, and then he's like, oh God. So he kind of comes over and he's like, hey, Steve, how things going? And I said, listen, bud, I heard it all. I get it. No problem. So there's less than a minute left in the game, and we have, defensively, we just put it to them that day. It was an unbelievable experience, just crushed their soul, to be honest with you. And they wanted to do a post-game interview, and the guy comes up to me and he's like, hey, Steve, can we? And I just looked at him and I said, F you. And then I laughed. That was a pretty good fit. I end up doing it. And to be honest with you, the next week, I think they felt bad because we had a ton of coverage that whole week. So
that's so funny.
That's awesome.
That's the first time I heard that one.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah, that's a good one. This is an interesting question. You've coached so many players in your career. You've had a long, extensive career. Who would you say is the most talented player you've ever coached?
Ooh, you really are putting me on the spot. The most talented.
And you can throw in as well your favorite player you ever coached.
Oh, you're just going to crush me here, aren't you?
Yeah, because I know there's going to be a lot of guys that I played with that are going to see this. So, if it happens to be one of them, that's fantastic. If it doesn't, it's all good.
Okay, so the most talented.
Because I know you've seen a lot of highly talented.
Yeah, there's been a lot of guys. I'll pick my one, and I'm not going to go with the full favorite, but one of my favorites was Ryan Jones, who quarterbacked at the 2001 Vanier Cup. And the reason for that is him and I's relationship was, he always jokes that he's still in therapy because of me. And, we had, we really tried to push each other to make us better. He pushed me to make me better as a coach, and I hopefully pushed him to be better as a player. And we had a really good relationship. The most talented, well, I guess if you base it off of, years in CFL, probably Dave Stella. Like, he punted, and here's a great Dave Stella story. And again, just happens to be against Laval. So it's 2002. We're playing, we're playing Laval. It's really early in the season, and our kicker got hurt in the warm-up. And so Dave ended up having to kick that day, kick the winning field goal, but also caught the touchdown to set us up for the winning field goal. He was unbelievable that day. And it's just one of those moments that you're like, I don't think there's anything he can't do on the football field. And I bet you if we put him at DB that day, he probably would have had a pick. It was on fire.
That's awesome.
Okay. I got a quick question for you. So what is the biggest difference that you could see today from the time you coached Sal? Like, what changed over that time that's like noticeable?
Okay, that's a great question. And there are really a few things that have changed. I would say, and this will sort of cover the whole AUS, but SMU specifically. They put in an age cap. And we were able at that time to recruit guys that still had 5 years of eligibility, even though they had played, their full junior careers. And we did a really good job of recruiting those guys. I would say the second thing is Ontario started to give scholarship money. And we were able to, at that time, to give a little bit of scholarship money. And that was a bit of an attraction. I think the third thing is, not only was Laval sort of a powerhouse back then, but now it's become Laval Montreal. and it's really closed the door on recruiting out of Quebec. It's become very, you can still get the occasional guy, but before we were, every year we could get 3 or 4 guys out of Quebec, and that's really changed. So I would say those 3 things in particular have really changed since Sal was playing at St. Mary's.
Okay.
That's interesting. Now I got another question. You'll probably like this one, or you may not. Which team would you say is the best team you've ever coached? Because I know you've coached, like I say, for so long. You've coached so many good teams, Vanier Cup teams that may have fell short just a bit. Which team would you say was probably like the most talented, best team you ever coached?
It was probably, and I'll probably put I'm going to name a couple because I'll have to. 2001 was so dominant. It just all clicked. A team that, gives up 35 points on defense and averages 60 a game on offense is pretty dominant. And to beat a very talented Bison's team that year in the Vanier, pretty handily. That would probably be the top one. I think the 2007 team was probably the second.
I was waiting to hear that.
I know you were waiting on that. And, the talent we had on that team, top down was phenomenal. And, sometimes circumstances come into play why we're not wearing a ring off of that team. And then I would probably, as weird as this sounds, the 2000 team I thought was probably better than our 2002 team, even though 2000 didn't win. As I know that sounds a little odd, but I thought from a talent standpoint,
right,
that was probably it. And then if I went to Carleton, I would say my next one would be the 2016 Carleton team, where we had 7 guys drafted into the CFL. That was a pretty loaded team.
Wow. So just so people, if they're unaware, in 2007, we had the Het Crichton nominee. We're dominating Laval in the UTEC Bowl, and he goes down with a knee injury. And, you go to the Vanier Cup with the number 1 ranked offense and the number 1 ranked defense, which is probably pretty rare in that league.
Yes.
That's the reason why I wanted you to mention that team. But, it was unfortunate. Like you said, there's circumstances that can happen in a season. And when we lost the Het Crichton guy, sorry, not Het Crichton nominee, he won the Het Crichton.
Yes.
And, so we lose that guy, and nothing against our backup or anything like that. It's just a tall order to ask a guy to come in and start his first game in the Vanier Cup of that season.
Yeah. And offensively, Eric was a very unique, when you talk about one of the best athletes, Eric would be in that upper echelon for sure. And, our offense was built around a lot of what Eric could do. And the uniqueness of his style of play. So, to ask somebody to go in that is not necessarily at that level, I don't know if you remember this, but the first opening drive of the game, we did drive the field, we scored, and it was kind of like, okay, but then, I don't want to use the word reality, but it was, there was only so many things left that we could that would fit us offensively for sure.
One thing Sid and I talked about before we got on is he was asking what type of coach is Coach Samarah, and I said that Coach Samarah is a player's coach. But one thing that I do remember is that I don't remember exactly what the offense was like with Billy Robinson, but what I do remember is your offense was like totally different when you got Eric Glavick. You adjusted to the player. You made the offense work for that style of quarterback, and you've seen what happened. Like I say, we were ranked number 1 on offense in the country, and that's something that is like high praise, because a lot of coaches, they have their way and they're unwilling to change to the player. And you understood that you had somebody very special at the position. I would argue probably top 3 players you've ever coached in terms of talent.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, and you recognized that and you adjusted, and that's the Steve Samarah that I take away and that I remember.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And it is hard. Sometimes, you really get dialed in on something like, yeah, I really want to do this. but your talent doesn't necessarily match it. And I guess if you look at it from, I got hired in late June of 2022. So I didn't recruit anybody at St. Mary's, and we walked into a season. And so we kind of went with, here's, a basic playbook that we'll try to run. And as the season went on, it was like, okay, this player can do this and this player can do that. And then, we kind of adjusted. And then going into the next year, we adjusted a bit more. And then even now it's like, okay, if this guy's going to be our starting quarterback, these are his strengths. Let's make sure that we put him in a good situation. And, I do appreciate you saying that, because I'd like to think that, being in it this long, you're doing it because of the players. I mean, that's the, yes, you want to win and all those things, but you want to see success in your guys. And obviously being on here and seeing you doing your thing is, even if it is all about the Niners, we'll still live with that.
Okay, well, I guess now is a good time to ask you this question. Is there any specific coach in your career that you like to emulate your game off of? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that is a really good. That's a great question. The reason I say that is, I think coaching is, as much as influences around you are very important, it's also, you have to stay true to yourself. And, Blake Nill and I, to this day, we talk, 2-3 times a week. And there's a lot of things that, I learned from Blake. But there's things about Blake that are just not in my DNA. So I learned quickly, I can't be that. I have to be me. My first real full-time coaching situation, John Stevens was the head coach, and just learning how he dealt with situations. And then, having the opportunity to coach on some of the Team Canada things and meeting other guys. And, there's a lot of smart football people in this country. And, and I think the other piece is not being completely set. You have to believe in certain things, but not to the point where you're pig-headed about it. Like, you have to be open to what's out there.
For sure. I got a question for you. What would you say is the path to success for coaches out there striving to reach the level of success you have? So as in, like, to be able to coach for such a long time at a high level.
Okay. I would say, I'll go back to number one, you got to be true to yourself. And number two, you got to know why you're doing it. If it's all about winning, it won't happen. There are very few teams, and every year there's only one team that wins. And I'll use our 2007 example. Like, we probably were the best team, but circumstances on that day, whatever the case may be, it didn't work out. And I think I would say the most important thing is that you're in it to have the guys you're coaching leave your program as better people. It's as simple as that. And if you can stay focused on that, like, we set ourselves up right now with 3 pillars. We say academics, football, and community. And if we can drive the bus that our guys, when they finish, have had a great football experience, have gotten their degree, and have leave as better people, then that's success. Because sometimes it's really hard to measure wins and losses.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. And on the other hand, for the younger players out there that are looking to be successful at a university level, what's the best advice you could give them?
First is being able to get in school. I mean, too many guys think that it's just naturally going to happen. But second, about if you just dial it right into the football piece, it's a process. Too many guys, and I see it down in like, my favorite football of all time was always the NCAA. I loved it. College football, it was great. And then they came in with the transfer portal and then these NIL deals. And it's really taken away sort of the core value of what it is. And to me, it's going to a program, committing to that program, having the pride of that program, not just when you're in it, but, many years later. And I think if players go with the expectation that they want to have a great experience, they've got a much better shot than if they go saying, I want to be a pro. Because the 1% is really small. And the 99% that really just go and enjoy it, sometimes those guys, because they've done all the right things in the program, get those opportunities. I'd say Sal is a guy that had those opportunities and took advantage of them and rode those opportunities. And because of that, if I asked him what was his favorite game, it would be, I don't know if it would be a game, in the pros. It probably would have been maybe an experience he had in college. And I think that, to me, says that you're now on the path to greatness.
Yeah, that's something it does.
For sure. My favorite memory in football would be at St. Mary's. There's no doubt about it. The things that, you take away from that experience is something that you can cherish, and nothing relates to it. Anything that I've done in my life since, nothing compares to that. You have a locker room full of men that you're so close with them. You have a coach that leads the way like you. And, that's something that, you hold on to those memories forever.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those are the things that give me goosebumps, because it's like, man, you sometimes when you're in it, you forget, impacts you have, some are positive and some they remind you of, hey, you said this to me, you're a bit of an ass. Like what? but it's things that they remember that stay with them.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to touch on a little bit of 49er football? That's exactly what we do here. So we thought, why not? Who better than Coach Samarah? So what is your take on Brock Purdy in the situation with the contract? Him expecting anywhere between $50 and $60 million. 49ers seem a little bit hesitant to pay it. Some people arguing that he may not be a top 10 quarterback in the league. So are you in the corner of Brock Purdy getting anywhere between 50 and 60, or are you in the corner of maybe making him play out his final year and see where it goes?
Wow. I can tell you this. The NFL has gone nuts because, I literally saw not long ago the listing of, how much quarterbacks were making. And I get it. Revenues have gone up and your salary cap goes up. But, when you're starting to take a quarter of your salary cap to play for one player, it does become a little bit insane. And let's be honest, they've had to let some pretty good players go because of the finances. And now, and I'm a Miami fan, sorry to all the 49ers out there, but, and I'm seeing it with Tua, like, they gave him the big money. But boy, oh boy, you're almost better in today's world drafting, having them stay 5 and dumping them. I mean, it just seems to be I know that's, a little bit of blasphemy, but I'm not sure if you told me Brock Purdy was going to make $50 million, I'd be very leery of giving him that much. Not that I don't think he's a good quarterback.
Yeah.
But wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way. See, like for me, I use you can relate to Tua, who's getting 53. You can relate to Trevor Lawrence, who's getting roughly the same, or Dak Prescott, who's getting 60. So if you want to argue that Brock Purdy's similar to those quarterbacks, or maybe even a bit better, you have an argument. But what's the state of those franchises? Those franchises are in the state of regret almost, and that they would wish they could take that money and put it elsewhere. And so I don't think the 49ers should go down the path of paying a guy who is on the brink of top 10. Now, if you had like top 4, there's only 4 elite quarterbacks in the league, if you ask me. Yeah. And, if you had one of those guys, then you're probably not hesitant to pay, and the contract probably already done. So I'm in full agreement with you on that. I don't know, Sid, if you want to touch on it, but that's my opinion as well.
Well, you talk about state of regret that they're in for sure, and the amount of risk you take on paying a guy like Tua or Dak Prescott that sort of money, where like I don't know, Tua deals with a lot of injuries. Dak Prescott has dealt with some bad injuries over the year. It's like you're investing so much money, so much into one player, where if that one player doesn't work out and you have him signed to a 4 or 5 year deal, your franchise could be in big trouble for the next upcoming years. So I don't know. It's a risk regardless. So I would prefer not taking on so much risk and maybe getting a little bit worse of a quarterback. I don't think the risk is worth it for me.
No, because to your point, you're stuck. And
Yeah.
and then what are you gonna? It's not like you can just up and trade them. And with the amount of how guaranteed money has now come onto the table, like you're stuck, and it's hit on your salary cap, and I don't know. And a guy like Purdy was really great when he had a really great team around him. He managed that game really well. You give a guy $50 million and everybody out there in Niner world, expectations of him are just going to rise and rise and rise, and they're going to expect him to be a top 4 quarterback. You know, but there's those top 4 for a reason.
Yeah. And
Right.
I think what you see with Brock Purdy is this past season, what you saw was a guy, around a team that was getting injured. And what happened is you don't have Christian McCaffrey coming out of the backfield anymore. And his top target, Brandon Ayuk, was injured. And you've seen a decline in his play. Now, I don't want to put it all on Brock Purdy. The team was in a state, it was injuries throughout offense and defense. And the defense was struggling. And we all know when a defense is struggling and the other team's putting up points, it puts a lot of pressure on a quarterback. And that's when turnovers happen. And that's what you saw. So Brock Purdy showed last year to me, he's not the reason why we went 6-11, but he's also not the reason why we could go 11-6 with that state. Where if you had a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson or a Patrick Mahomes, or Joe Burrow, you might actually end up still 11-6, and they fight through it. And again, I don't want to disrespect the name of Brock Purdy by any means, but it's just to deserve $60 million, you need to be able to overcome some things, and I don't think he's that guy.
Yeah, I think we can see where football is sort of evolving is that the quarterbacks are becoming more and more athletic. And what happened when you get that is they make a lot more flashy plays and start making a lot more money. That's not Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is a really smart quarterback, and he's going to minimize mistakes. So that's where his value comes in. Not to say he doesn't have athletic gifts like his legs that he could scramble, but he's more of the smarter quarterback where if he doesn't have that athleticism, you need to surround him with it, and you need more money to go in that direction than to give it all to Brock Purdy. So if you're paying a guy like Josh Allen who has all that athleticism, it helps you because you don't need as much around him, right?
That's true.
Totally agree.
Okay, just one last question because it's the funny question. What's your memory of Sal Borhat at SMU? What's your favorite memory? What was it like recruiting him? What stands out in memory?
Well, I can tell you this. When we recruited you, the best thing was I remember thinking, holy crap, like this guy's a freak. He's 6'3", 6'2", in that range.
Yeah.
And somebody that could play on the corner, someone that could play free safety. I love the fact that you were long, you were fast, you were physical. Your highlight coming out was like, man, like we need this guy. And you just carried that through your whole career. The part that I'm not sure if people remember, because you did make it part of anything, is in spring ball. We're in spring ball now. I think it was 6 or 7 or that it happened that you hurt your Achilles, and everybody said it's an 8 to 10 month thing and doesn't have a chance of coming back. And it just talked about your perseverance. And you were playing in that season. And I thought that was, I still to this day, Sal, tell that story about how you came, like, this guy, he was hurt and he found a way and, you know, didn't do surgery, just rehabbed. And I remember, I think it was Chad at the time when it was like, you know, Steve, like, he's done. And you just refused to believe it. And I think that was the part I liked about you the best, was that was your personality, and it didn't matter the challenge, you were going to take it on.
That's another credit to the program. Not a lot of people overcome something like that, and you can't do it alone. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, Coach, it was a pleasure having you. You know, hopefully down the road we can do another one or something like that. But
anytime.
You know, I just feel like, you know, I could pick up the phone 10 years from now and it's like as if we talked yesterday. It's one of those relationships that will never die off, and I'm very, very grateful for it.
And as am I. And I really appreciate you guys doing this. And hopefully the guys in the GM at the Niners is watching and understands what the real football people know.
Okay, till next time, Coach. Take care, and
all right.
we'll be in touch.
Pleasure meeting you.
Thanks, guys.